Good morning, friends. Welcome to another broadcast teaching of the Holy Mountain Church of God. We're going to talk about Wesleyan Bible prophecy this morning, and we're going to see it as an historical view of the book of Revelation. And that's a fantastic change from what most of us have heard all our lives. It's a learning experience, and we're going to just give you a very brief introduction to what is explained in our book, End Time 101, a Wesleyan view, and we explain everything that we're just going to mention briefly here. The book of Revelation is to be rightly interpreted as an historical view of the time between Christ's first and second advents. And that was the traditional view of the Christian church throughout its long history up until about 1830, when you had a change in England to introduce a premillennial view, which later morphed into the dispensational view, which later in modern times morphed into Christian Zionism, which controls the politics of America today. So this is very relevant to where we are today, and what's going to happen is told in this book. And so I'm going to just give you a tantalizer for this book from the chapter titles, so you'll know whether or not you want to read it, but let me just give you the chapter titles. The introduction, why question the familiar end time? Because we'll never understand the book of Revelation until we are willing and able to question the familiar end time, because the familiar end time just doesn't get it. It's clueless. Chapter 1, Classic Darbyism, Logically Imploded. Now, the familiar end time is classic Darbyism, alias dispensational premillennialism, Christian Zionist mindset today. It's logically imploded in its roots in Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks. And then we move from that to chapter 2, the Christ of Daniel's 70th week, giving the scriptural proofs abundant and clear that Jesus Christ, not future Antichrist, is the divinely intended covenant maker of the 70th week. And so we outline all of that. And then we come back from that foundation to look at the rapture conflict of popular eschatology. Is the rapture pre, mid, or post? It's all nonsense, because the future 7 years doesn't exist to start with. It's a misnomer. And so we reimagine the rapture biblically as happening at the last day and the last trump sounding. Jesus is coming back for the general resurrection, the universal judgment. You get classic Darbyism out of the way. You can see that clearly. And then we move on in chapter 4 to look again at the 7th week, a new understanding. The 7 years is not 7 literal years. It's the week. The word for weeks is 7, 1-7, and it refers to the entire age. The logic is the resurrection of Christ, giving him endless life. The week belongs to Christ. Christ's resurrection changed the nature of time, and the week follows Christ in the same orbit of time transcendency, and so it is a symbol for the present age, and we give all the rationale from that, how that it plays out in logical understanding. And then we deal with the apocalyptic time frames unsealed, how the apocalyptic time frames fit into this structure. Amazing revelation. And then a new view of prophecy emerges from the book of Revelation, and we outline the 5 historical periods in church history that correspond to the first horse riders in chapter 6. And then we have a biblical timeline, finally, to Armageddon, in which all of this is brought together to unseal the long-sealed mysteries of apocalyptic understanding that lead from these time frames to our present time this year. No doubt Jesus is coming for the last judgment to correspond and to synchronize with the Feast of Tabernacles later this year. Now, this is logical because of the feasts of God that were fulfilled in other events in the life of Christ. For example, Passover fulfilled Calvary, Jesus' death on the cross. The resurrection of Christ fulfilled the feast of first fruits, and Pentecost fulfilled the Feast of Weeks, which is the beginning of the 70th week. That's very interesting. The Feast of Weeks, the 7th week began on Pentecost. So it all ties together, and then it brings us right down to the imminent coming of Christ. And so this is very enlightening, and I hope that you'll read the book. There's a lot in that. It's scholarly. Make no apologies for being a scholar. We've studied this all our life. We're thankful that the Lord has privileged us to have a part in this. It wakes up the church, and so you need to read it to get woke up. And when you're awake, you want to awaken other people, because we realize how dire it is that so many are so sound asleep, so delusional in popular Schofield Darbyism. But God is waking up his church. Praise the Lord.